Celtics Talk Radio. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Celtics Talk Radio live post-game chat with Igor and Danny. This is episode number 3 of our live video post-game chat that you're going to watch on our YouTube channel as a special show on demand. And if you love what we are doing, don't worry, we will have more live video post-game chats. The first one will be on February 1st after Toronto Raptors game and after all bigger games. And you can also chat with us during those live video chats and watch the shows on demand on our brand new YouTube channel. So subscribe for the YouTube channel to watch those shows, and also you can subscribe at the US streams. And you can find us at Facebook with Green Celtics Fans Forum and Celtics Talk Radio page, on Twitter, Celtics Talk Radio page, STI capital letters, then on Instagram, Celtics Talk Radio page, then of course blogtalkradio.com, Celtics Talk Radio, our broadcasting stations and platform. So you can listen the show, radio show, also at the iTunes. Search and Google Celtics Talk Radio on the iTunes. And finally, you can, of course, find us at the Instagram for Instagram lovers. Like I said, this is live post-game video chat with Igor and Danny. Today is January 27th, and you will watch this on demand on our YouTube channel and our Facebook pages and Twitter pages. So tonight, of course, like always with me, Daniel Camacho. Danny, hello, welcome to the show.
Hey Igor, what's up, Celtic fans?
And for the beginning, on this very episode, Danny and I will recap the last 3 games and announce the next 3 games alongside some Celtics news, informations, and all the stuff. 2 hours or even more than 2 hours. However long does it take, it doesn't matter. We don't have time limitation here. We want to present you all necessary information about your beloved Celtics. So, in the last 3 games, the Celtics had record 1 win and 2 losses. But 1 win was probably the biggest win of the season. The last night, 120-109 with 38 over Houston Rockets. James Harden and Houston Rockets, one legit team, number 3 at the Western Conference, and almost 70% of winning percentage, 69 precisely, and 38 points we received. 38 points Isaiah Thomas, then Al Horford 9 assists, then Jay Crowder 10 rebounds, and before that we had 3 games losing streak, and we lost from Portland Trailblazers on TD Garden January 21st, Saturday, 123-127 in overtime. Isaiah Thomas 41 points and 6 assists, Al Horford 9 rebounds. And after that, one exciting game in Washington, D.C., Verizon Center, Washington 108-123, the loss from Washington Wizards. Isaiah Thomas 25 points and 13 assists, and Jay Crowder 6 rebounds. And yesterday, January 25th, we defeated the Houston Rockets 120-109. And when we look at the standings now at the Eastern Conference, just a moment, when we look at the standings at the Eastern Conference, Cleveland Cavaliers are still number 1, 30 wins and 14 losses, 68.9. Toronto number 2, 28 and 18. They are having currently 5 games losing streak. I sincerely wish that this losing streak will continue. And they have 60.9%. They are 3 games away from Cleveland. Boston number 3, 27 and 18, 60%, 3.5 games away from Cavaliers. Atlanta number 4, second, because those standings are updating. And what I want to say in the meantime is that tomorrow game in Boston against Orlando Magic, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, live play-by-play at our page, Viblit Green. Tomorrow's game will be important for Boston Celtics because they can tie virtually the record with Toronto Raptors. Like I said, Toronto Raptors 28 and 18, 46 games played, and Boston Celtics 27-18. We have 45 games played, 60%. Atlanta number 4, 27-19, 58.7%. 4 games away from Cleveland, or just half game away from us. Washington Wizards number 5, 25 and 20, 56%, or 5.5 games away from Cleveland, and Washington is 2 games away from Boston, number 3. Indiana, 50%, 8 games away from Cleveland, the same with Charlotte, 23 and 23, and number 8, Chicago. Chicago is below 50%. So that has been said. We lost golden opportunity to surpass the can you hear me? So that has been said. We lost the golden opportunity to surpass Toronto Raptors if we won, for example, one of those 3 games that we lost, and we have still opportunity to tie the game, the record with them tomorrow. But if they win, we will have to win the game to Saturday too. And Saturday we are playing. Just a second. Orlando Magic. Friday, and in Milwaukee against the Bucks Saturday. So if we win Friday against the Magic and Saturday against the Bucks, no matter about the result of Toronto Raptors, we will be tied or ahead of them. And Danny, first comment about the last 3 games, 1 and 2. And the Celtics, despite injury bug, I have obligation to mention, Avery Bradley is still out with the Achilles. He has walking boot, out until the end of the week. Tyler Zeller returned, didn't play. And Demetrius Jackson returned, James Young returned, Avery Bradley is still out. And despite limping, Al Horford seems to be okay from the last night. And Jonas Jerebko will receive the 4 stitches after receiving a hand hit from James Harden that was rewarded with flagrant 1. They will. Jonas Jerebko will have. Is having 4 stitches, but he said that he is good to go Friday night against Orlando Magic. So despite that injury back, and despite everything, Daniel, we have the chance, if we win the next 2 games, to tie or be ahead of Toronto Raptors, position number 2, Eastern Conference. Isn't that impressive? In my opinion, it is.
Of course, it's impressive. when you think about it, the way it's gone pretty much for the team as of late, you have Avery Bradley out, as you said, which is arguably the top guy, the captain of this team, even though Isaiah Thomas is the one that does all the work offensively. You have, in this case, a situation where you're having to play with several players off the bench and from the starting lineup throughout this season having to be out. And as of late, you've had several bench players, whether it's been Gerald Green, Tyler Zeller, having to miss time. And you've had to rely on players who don't usually get playing time to have to go onto the field, or should I say onto the court, and actually play. So we've been completely undermanned going into these games. And, of course, yesterday against the Houston Rockets, that's pretty much the biggest win of the season for this team. And the fact that you're right there, many people this season weren't giving you a chance to really do much, even with the signing of Al Horford. And you can say that if you had taken care of business against some of the weaker teams in your schedule, you could very well be not only ahead of Toronto right now, but even be ahead of the Cavaliers in this case, because of the fact that those teams, who everybody makes them look, and especially the Cavaliers, makes them look like they're so unbeatable. Those teams are proving to basically be mortal in this case. So the Celtics right now are in a pretty good position, especially knowing that the All-Star break is just a couple weeks away. The trade deadline is only a couple weeks away. And Danny Ainge is in a prime position where he may just need one or two more pieces to make this team the biggest threat to LeBron James and the Cavaliers, instead of it being the Toronto Raptors. And if that ends up happening, where you're the one going to the Eastern Conference Finals to face LeBron and company, instead of it being the Toronto Raptors, you will have accomplished exactly what you needed to do this season, which is proving yourself to be a team that could basically fight for a championship, and that will draw the free agents you need this summer to come your way.
Yes, that is the point that we are underlying on every show. So, Celtics fans and NBA fans, don't listen to those writers that are 90% against the Celtics, even pro-Celtics writers that are saying that because Cavaliers are stronger and we have on the other side Clippers with Doc, then Golden State Warriors. Now, Boston Celtics should not make any trades, should not build the championship team. They should tank. They should rebuild. They should develop the young talents. This is all, pardon my language, bullshit and bullcrap. If you build the championship team piece by piece, the way Danny Ainge is building, eventually LeBron James will be old enough in a couple of years to compete. And who knows, maybe this Cavaliers team will fall apart, because, who knows what James will wish tomorrow. He is one spoiled man, and, he's not stable personality. So, anyway, if you build the championship team piece by piece, just like Danny Ainge is doing, you will win championship sooner rather than later. But if you wait for Golden State Warriors and Cavaliers to go away, to just disappear from the contendership land, you will never win the championship. Anyway, let's return, Danny, to yesterday's game. And when you mentioned Avery Bradley, I want to say Avery Bradley effect. I have the picture that is saying that with Avery Bradley, we have 22-13 record. 22-13. We have 5-4 without Avery Bradley. 22-13 with him, without him, 5-4. Also, we are allowing with Avery Bradley 34% opponents field goal percentage, and without Avery Bradley 39%. And our defensive rating is very bad. without Avery Bradley. With Avery Bradley, 104. Without Avery Bradley, 112, and even worse. So that's points per opponent's points per 100 possession allowed. You know that Avery Bradley is, like you said, probably the best two-way player, and we cannot wait to until we have him back again in our lineup. That has been said, Danny, I want to talk about one little detail. Yesterday I mentioned that Jonas Jerebko is having 4 stitches on his face, and that is thanks to James Harden and his hands. And of course, the debates are at the NBA right now. Was it intentional foul of Harden with a hand on his face in the attack or not? But it was rewarded with the flagrant 2 foul. Now, I have suspicions that James Harden was frustrated and wanted to cause an incident last night. It doesn't necessarily mean that he did it on purpose. On the contrary, I think that it was not on purpose, probably, but it was the sign of clear frustration from James Harden. But I want to make it clear that the rules are clear in this situation. It doesn't have any influence on the call, flagrant 1. Is that move by James Harden intentional or not intentional? You know, what it counts is that he had the contact with the defensive player, unnecessary and extended contact, and that has been said, flagrant 1 is good decision. The refs could even give Harden flagrant 2 call, even though I think it would not be justified, flagrant 2. But the rules are clear in this case. So but to underline that flagrant 1 call was justified call from the officials. Officials were terrible, one-sided, especially in the first half, when they rewarded 50 calls, every single one to the Houston Rockets case. The Houston Cavs had more free throws than us and everything else. So I don't want to justify the officials, but the officiating was terrible. Even Mike Gorman complained, and I just want to say that this call, flagrant 1, in my opinion, is justified. Do you think that it was intentional or not? And Jonas Jerebko should be fined, hopefully, for tomorrow's game.
Well, in my opinion, we've seen. It looks like there's something going on with the mic here. Don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello. Okay, so in my opinion, what we got to see yesterday is what we see constantly from James Harden. James Harden is somebody who goes the route of flailing his arms because he's hoping to get the foul call to go in his favor because of the fact that he needs the free throws to try and patent his stats. And unfortunately, we got the officials today who are, a little bit too stupid to actually keep giving him the foul calls. Yesterday, Jay Crowder did a number on him when it came to the defense that he was playing, along with Al Horford, who got involved in some of the defensive moves as well. And it was obvious that Harden, as you said, was getting frustrated because he was held in check, and that was the biggest thing here. Harden basically was not allowed to go the route of looking like the MVP candidate that he usually is, And so on that specific play, he tried going one against all when it came to going through the Celtics defense, and he filled his arms in the air, hoping that he can basically get the officials to give him a call rather than him losing the ball and having it end up as a steal. And unfortunately, his arms went the wrong way, and he smacked, Jonas Jerebko in the mouth. Now, of course, luckily for him, the officials gave him the foul call he wanted, which went against Jay Crowder. So Crowder got the got the foul call called against him. But the fact that you end up drawing blood, basically in this case, they had no choice but to go the route of basically calling the flagrant foul against him. And I do believe there was in the audience yesterday, one of the guys who oversees the officiating and basically gives a review of how the officials does and basically determines who gets to keep their job after the season and who gets fired. He was there in this game last night, and so the officials, in my opinion, were,
commissioner for the officiating. You're correct. He was.
So the commissioner for the officiating was there. And for a fact in this case that played a role in this whole situation, because they know if they go the route of letting that play go with Harden getting absolutely nothing and you got Jerebko on the floor bleeding from the mouth, any one of them could basically, or even all three, could be facing some sort of, scorning from that commissioner, because he's going to say just because Harden is a superstar doesn't mean you let him get away with something that severe. A minor foul is one thing, but for him to draw blood from a player, that's what we got to prove to our fans, that we're actually concerned about the safety of our players, because that's what the commissioner overall, has said. So that in itself might have actually helped the Celtics in this entire situation, because if he wasn't there, I wouldn't have been surprised if the officials had let it go and just said it was a common foul, because technically Crowder was the one that fouled Harden, which caused his arms to go up in the air.
Excellent stuff, Danny. And now let's get back from the moment from this game, and we will get back to the game to talk a little about the game, the keys and everything else. But let's say that let's discuss a little about the Celtics news that are currently on the air at the internet. And the first one is that draw my attention. That is something that will be interesting for the Celtics Nation. Already posted at our page with green, and the fans are having vividly discussions about that. Trade rumors of Carmelo Anthony, Jimmy Butler, and the Stars. And now report from NBA.com, Los Angeles Clippers, Boston Celtics reportedly pursuing Carmelo Anthony. And I'm waiting until my article is uploaded here, and I just want to say that apparently, according to those sources, the Knicks general manager Phil Jackson have offered Carmelo Anthony to Clippers, Celtics, and apparently Carmelo Anthony wants to play with LeBron James and Cleveland Cavaliers. So until my article is uploaded, because I have some problems, Danny, let me ask you, what do you think about that article and those rumors that are saying that Carmelo Anthony could end up in the Celtics? And for example, I think that definitely they will ask, for example, for the Nets first rounder, this year or the next year. And I really don't think that we should trade the Nets first rounder in this very point for Carmelo Anthony himself. For Jimmy Butler, the different discussion. For Carmelo Anthony, 2 years ago maybe. Right now, it will be total lunacy, in my opinion.
Well,
What can you tell us?
when it comes to that, I totally agree with you in this situation. I feel that Carmelo Anthony would be a waste of us going that route. Right now, for one, the guy isn't in the prime of his career like, say, Jimmy Butler would be, or some of these younger superstars that we would be looking into. Carmelo Anthony, for one, isn't, he's capable of going toe-to-toe with LeBron, offensively, but defensively, he's just like Isaiah Thomas, a liability. And it's bad enough that we got to be worrying about what Isaiah Thomas is going to give up, defensively with his defensive situation. How many points is he going to allow his counterpart on the other team to give up because of the fact that he can't stop him? We don't need another player to basically come to this team and actually go that route. If you think about it, one of the best things about Paul Pierce when he was here was that not only was Paul Pierce capable of going toe-to-toe with LeBron, but he was also capable of shutting LeBron down when it mattered most, getting in front of him and getting the stops that we needed at the clutch time. Carmelo Anthony is not that type of player. And then to make it even worse with this situation, we all know the New York Knicks. The Knicks are going to treat Carmelo Anthony like he's a future Hall of Famer, and they're going to want, an arm and a leg for this guy. In my opinion, if you were to tell me that maybe they take one of the Brooklyn picks and maybe, let's say Jay Crowder and one of our younger players, then maybe I can consider it. But the latest I've heard is that they would want Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, and both Brooklyn picks for this year and next year in order for us to basically get Carmelo Anthony. And again, this is a situation where I would look at, if I'm Brad Stevens, I would look at Phil Jackson and simply laugh in the guy's face. And I would say, you're the one that's trying to get rid of this guy, and then yet you're coming with a demand like that. If it was me going after Carmelo Anthony, then you basically go asking for, the world for him. But you're the one trying to get rid of him, and yet you're asking for a major package, a package that I'm not even going to consider giving up, knowing that, for one, we don't even know if Carmelo Anthony, Igor, is going to be willing to re-sign with this team, knowing that he's already gone the route of showing his pleasure or showing that he wants to be with either LeBron James in Cleveland or he wants to go to the Clippers. Those are his top two teams. And pretty much the only reason he's not being traded to Cleveland is the fact that the New York Knicks, in order to send him over there, want Kevin Love. And the Cavaliers pretty much are not willing to make a deal for Carmelo Anthony unless they get to keep LeBron, Love, and Irving, because they know they need 4 superstars on that team to go at it with the 4 superstars in Golden State. So, in my opinion, Carmelo's going to be stuck there unless the New York Knicks basically go the route of taking a major discount in order to just simply say, we'll take whatever you can give us and let him go because it's going to benefit us in the long run. But, again, deep down, if I had to choose between him and Jimmy Butler, I'm taking Butler because Butler's got a longer career ahead of him. And right now, he's around the same age that some of our top players are, meaning that you got he's capable of playing the same type of game plan that we usually run, which is a high-paced game, and it would make it where instantly, because of his contract, we don't have to worry about him ditching us because he wants to go to another team where he thinks he's going to be able to have it easy the same way a lot of these other superstars have been doing, like Durant, for example.
And that is well said. That is why I'm rooting for Doc and the Clippers to get Carmelo Anthony, and I'm sure that the Knicks will rob them. So good luck with that. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the trade rumors, including New York Knicks and forward Carmelo Anthony. Anthony may have no trade clause in his contract, but that apparently hasn't stopped his name from being in the mix for the deals. A day after the Knicks and Cavaliers were linked in the trade talks, today the Knicks and Clippers were mentioned as potential partners to report in the New York Daily News, Frank Isola. They aren't only possible destinations because Adrian Wojnarowski and Chris Mannix of the Vertical reporting that the Knicks have reached out to the Boston Celtics about that possible trade. And while the Clippers have the big three in place with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan, any deal involving the Clippers could not include Griffin. Isola explains, the Knicks and the Clippers are discussing a deal for Carmelo Anthony that doesn't include Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan going to the New York. The Knicks, according to the sources, are open to trading Anthony to Los Angeles if they don't get, are open to trade, even if they don't get one of the three stars. In fact, the Knicks are prohibited from acquiring Blake Griffin due to complicated rule in the collective bargaining agreement. The rule states that the team cannot have two designated rookie maximum extensions on your roster acquired via trade at any time. So Derrick Rose falls under one and they cannot have the other one. In order to do so, the Clippers would have to trade approximately $27 million salary to fit Anthony's cap. A Clippers deal for Anthony would likely include even one or two players from the group of Jamal Crawford, JJ Redick, Austin Rivers, who is the son of Clippers head coach Doc Rivers, as we know. No deal is imminent, and in the facts, the Knicks will likely seek better offer since the NBA trade deadline February 23rd. The big stumbling block is that Anthony has no trade clause and has the power to veto any deals. Last week, Anthony told Knicks president Phil Jackson that he didn't want to be traded. However, the Knicks appear to be open under assumption that if they can find a good spot for Carmelo Anthony, he may consider to waive his no trade clause. Anthony is close with Chris Paul and owns a home in Los Angeles. Wojnarowski and Mannix saying about Boston that they're trying to pursue Carmelo Anthony. Armed with the hope that Carmelo Anthony will eventually waive his no-trade clause, the New York Knicks have reached out to the Boston Celtics, Los Angeles Clippers, and Cleveland Cavaliers for destinations for Carmelo Anthony. Knicks president Phil Jackson is determined to find destination and the deal for Anthony that he would agree and accept before the trade deadline February 23rd, league source said. So Jackson is determined to get rid of Anthony and his contract and start the rebuilding process with Kristaps Porzingis, league source said. Anthony is makes 24.6 million this season and has 54 million remaining over the next 2 years in his contract. So 54 million over the next 2 years, which is massive, and his deal includes 50% of the trade kicker and player option for 2018-17 year. So in other words, for 2018-17, we would not have him signed, but he will have to agree to stay with us, which is really complicated and up in the air. And I don't see the reason why the Celtics would do this, because it's really complicated, it is not shorting, and I don't see what the Celtics will achieve in the short and long run Carmelo Anthony. What about you?
Well, it's the truth. As of right now, Carmelo Anthony has not proven that he's capable of really leading a team anywhere. He's made it to the playoffs, and that's really it. Has he really been able to get close to winning an NBA championship with any other teams he's really been on, whether it's been New York or Denver? Not really. In New York, the only reason he likes being there is because of the fact that it's one of the biggest city, or if not the best city in the country overall. All the lights, all the celebrities, like LA, for example, and plus they pay him like crazy, and he's the top dog there. He knows if he goes to Cleveland, for example, LeBron James will always be the man in this case. But just like Durant did when he went to Golden State, Carmelo Anthony knows he's gonna be on the easy path pretty much to an NBA championship in this case, and there will only be one team you gotta worry about in order to get that championship, which would be the Golden State Warriors, but you only gotta face them once in the finals in this case. So Carmelo Anthony, it's understandable why he wouldn't want to leave New York, but come on, at some point you're gonna have to realize that in this case, if it's not working, you're better off going somewhere else, basically, and starting over. But Carmelo Anthony saying he doesn't want to leave New York is proving the championship is basically not what's most important to him. It's the cash that he cares most about. The cash and the glory, basically, of scoring his points and being viewed as the top dog in that city. Because we all know the Brooklyn Nets are from the same city, but the Brooklyn Nets are nowhere near as good as the New York Knicks in this case, and they probably never will be with the way that Brooklyn Nets organization is run. So Carmelo Anthony, that's another reason why Celtic fans wouldn't really want him over here, because you've proven throughout your career you don't really care to win an NBA championship, and that's what we want. We want players who are going to look to win a championship, and that's not you. You don't qualify.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that report from Chris Mannix and Adrian Wojnarowski from the vertical, but until I'm able to do that, I just want to say that, again, I don't see Carmelo Anthony made us good enough to surpass Cleveland Cavaliers this year. Maybe if we can get some good center alongside with him, but I would say that even in that situation, we would have the weak bench and certainly weaker starting lineup, because, like you said, the New York Knicks are requiring Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder. So that has been said. I think that it's total lunacy, Daniel, for the Celtics to try to acquire Carmelo Anthony, if that is true, and total lunacy to give up the 2 first rounders from Brooklyn Nets 2017 and right to swap the picks in 2017 year, and directly that golden first rounder in 2017-18 season. And knowing the Brooklyn Nets organization, I have, undivided feeling that that pick will be also top 5, top 6. Something is telling me. I'm talking about the draft in 2018 year. And the Celtics are possessing that pick. And again, the 2017 draft is going to be swamped, and currently projected, we are seeing that the Nets are the worst team in NBA, and they have chance to finish at the bottom of the NBA, which will give us about, if I'm correct, 65 or 66% to have top 3 picks, in the NBA and the most chance to land number 1 pick in the NBA 2017, and you have the good draft expert Kevin O'Connor said in the conversation with Jay King on the Lock on the Celtics that this year's draft will be really huge, because even if the Celtics are possessing number 5 or number 6 pick, the Celtics can get a starting player and potential all-star. I mean, not necessarily, but potential, you know. And from the position number 1, you will have the chance to land the future franchise player and future star. So, I mean, again, you have the situation in NBA where you have Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James at the one side, and Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, and Golden State Warriors on the other side, plus the Clippers that are having top 3 stars and searching for the 4th. So in that situation, I'm all for the Celtics to build the championship contender as soon as it is possible, but not by the all costs, and that doesn't mean that the Celtics have to be robbed by the Knicks on any other team, because the Celtics are not desperate to do that type of move at this moment. Right, Danny?
Exactly. There's no need to go that route of making a move right now if we're not, confident, especially if the player is not showing a willingness to commit to staying with us. Because as you said, many people are predicting that this year's, the draft is going to have several good players when it comes to the coming out of college. And the way the season is going right now, the Brooklyn Nets have the worst record in the NBA by several games. So pretty much right now, you're guaranteed to have at least one of the top 4 picks at this rate, unless they make a great second half and end up passing a few teams. You're going to be in the top 4 at this point. So why in the world would you give that up for a player who could very well end up going the route of ditching you, whether it be, this offseason or next offseason, when you could very well get a player who might have the same type of abilities and talent just going into the league, and that player could very well end up being just like that player in a couple years, knowing that that player will be going into their prime at the exact same time that Carmelo, that LeBron, that Durant, and all these other boys are basically getting ready to hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back, as they would say. So you would be having your own superstar ready to take over the league with, whoever you have at that point, whether it be Isaiah Thomas, Al Horford, or even several other players like Jaylen Brown, who you're basically, going the route of building up now at a time where LeBron James will no longer be able to dominate the league the way he does. So Carmelo Anthony, it's all about whether or not he's willing to commit to you. If he's not going to commit himself to actually stay with you, then forget it. I am not giving up something that could be valuable like that, where I could get someone that might have the same abilities you do and would just need time to basically go the route of, getting adjusted to the NBA's game and, rules, than to actually have you and see you leave us to go play for LeBron and them, or play for another team in the West in a couple years, whether it be this offseason or next offseason, just because of the fact that, you were desperate, your team was desperate to get rid of you in New York because they finally realized you were worth the money.
Yeah, and I had luck because I found the report from Chris Mannix from the Vertical, and a couple of other sites, and he is doing color comments at the Yeah, I mean, color comments at Comcast Sportsnet, and he is, doing live post-game shows at Comcast Sportsnet. Anyway, in another news, our partner Jared sent us that Rajon Rondo had clashed with Dwayne Wade, and I mean, first, I don't care about it, and the second, who is surprised about it? And anyway, let's return to the Celtics. Here is Wojnarowski and Mannix about Boston pursuing Anthony. Armed with the hope that, yeah. So, let me see the report from the Vertical, because, beside Cavaliers, the Knicks reach out to the Celtics Clippers in that trade. And like we said, Jackson is determined to trade him, and he thinks that the Celtics are having the assets and they are fools enough to give him 2 picks and Ivory Bradley and, like you said, Jay Crowder. And again, I will not trade any of Clippers picks for him. NBA trade rumors, no major deals since Kyle Korver to Cavaliers transaction. And like we said, Danny, Jimmy Butler is not happy in Chicago, and he expressed that in last night's loss. And that he could potentially be available until the trade deadline, or next summer before the draft night. So I want to ask you, Danny, what do you think about Jimmy Butler and his situation in Chicago?
Well, I don't know what made the Chicago Bulls think that this whole situation was actually going to work to begin with. For example, they bring in Dwayne Wade and they bring in Rajon Rondo. We all know the history between those two as Boston Celtic fans, knowing what Wade did to Rondo and making his arm basically get messed up by taking him down to the ground and holding one arm. Of course, Celtic fans, and if you're an NBA fan in general, you know what I'm talking about. So those two, in my opinion, the moment I heard Wade was going over there with Rondo, I knew it was just a matter of time before something was going to happen between those two. We've seen Rondo basically force his way out of Boston, and then he basically forced his way out of the next team that we ended up sending him to. So Rondo is somebody that pretty much, unless it's his team and unless he gets what he wants, he is not satisfied. And in this case, in Chicago, it's not his team. It's Jimmy Butler's team, and that's the whole reason why Derrick Rose is gone, because Jimmy Butler was the one they wanted to build around. Now you got the situation of all the trade rumors coming into play where they're saying the Bulls are willing to basically get rid of Jimmy Butler, or at least talking to teams and seeing what they can get for him because they want to, build around Dwayne Wade instead. Which to me, that is a slap in the face to Jimmy Butler, because you chose him over Derrick Rose. And then now you're telling him you're not good enough. We want to go with Dwayne Wade, knowing that Dwayne Wade is older. Yeah, he's got more experience. He's won rings. But come on, Dwayne Wade has never won a championship without having a major player on his team. He had to win it with Shaquille O'Neal, for example. And then the next ones he had to win with LeBron James and Chris Bosh having to help him. He didn't win a championship in Miami where he was the only superstar basically in there. You've never seen that happen pretty much. The only player I can recall since I've been watching the NBA that did it was, like Kobe Bryant, for example, did it. In this case, he was able to prove that he could get the job done without Shaq. But Dwayne Wade has never done that. So now you want to go the route of kicking, Butler to the curb. So this is not a surprise to me, especially knowing that the team is going south right now. So if the Bulls want to get rid of Butler, Again, they're doing the same thing that the Knicks are doing with Carmelo. They're willing to get rid of him, but they want an arm and a leg for the player. But in this case, in my opinion, if I'm going to give up an arm and a leg for either one of those two, as I said earlier, it's Butler I'm going to give it for, because Butler is under contract for more years than Carmelo is, and he's still basically in the prime of his career. There are several players that are like that I would basically take over Carmelo. Someone like, Carmelo, should I say like Jimmy Butler, someone like Paul George, players like that I would take ahead of Carmelo because of the fact that they got the talent basically to do exactly what Carmelo does, and they're younger in this case. So the Chicago Bulls, the fact that they even brought Rondo and Wade to the same team and thought it was going to work out just shows how many idiots pretty much they got working at the top of that team when it comes to the ownership down. Now you got Wade and Butler basically talking crap about the team after the games are over, and then Rondo basically is talking crap on social media about them and basically voicing his displeasure about what they're saying. Rondo pretty much, he's going to be sent out one way or another, and it's going to get to a point where I think Rondo's just going to have to leave the league because he's not going to be able to find a team where he's going to stay long-term at any point.
Yeah, and I have updates, excellent stuff from our friends, Jay King, and of course from Tom Westerholm about what we are talking, and I'm trying to open that link. Yep. So about the Butler thing, like you said, we had, the discussions with Chicago Bulls prior to the 2016 draft night, but that trade just failed. The Bulls were asking for the price that the Celtics didn't want to pay at that very moment, and Butler stayed in Chicago. In fact, Chicago decided at that moment to keep Butler, like you said, and that caused a lot of anger in the Celtics land, and the Celtics fans just was not satisfied with it. We talk about it in our show after, the draft night, and again, we want Jimmy Butler, and if he is available, certainly that the Celtics should, reach out to Jimmy Butler. But you know that Carmelo Anthony loves melodrama. Just remember when he was traded from Denver Nuggets to the New York Knicks, how many weeks and months we were literally harassed from the media on daily basis with soap opera that is taking place between Carmelo Anthony, Denver Nuggets, and New York Knicks. So this boy, man, is similar in one thing with LeBron James. He loves melodrama, and he loves to be the center of attention. So anyway, New York Post writer thinks that the trade of Carmelo Anthony to Boston Celtics would have the sense for Boston Celtics. The latest edition of which star player is linked to the Boston is, New York Post Mark Bergman suggested that Carmelo is ideal fit for the Celtics, and Jay King is saying about that this. The proposed trade in story, Jay Crowder, Amir Johnson, Jonas Jerebko, and Boston's own 2018 first rounder doesn't make sense. So I will repeat: Jay Crowder, Amir Johnson, Jonas Jerebko, and Boston's own 2018 first rounder. That doesn't make any sense. Even if it did make sense, it's not clear whether Anthony would waive his no-trade clause to go to Boston. So, the latest report suggesting he wants to stay in Knicks, despite Phil Jackson is trying to ship him off. And the writer, Charles Rosen, said Anthony has outlived his usefulness in New York. While it's possible something like that could convince Anthony to leave, he has reportedly never wavered in his desire to stay with the Knicks, even as the team has annual underwhelmed. Wojnarowski said, there is no reason Melo wanted no trade clause. There is a reason Melo wanted no trade clause in his contract. He wants to leave and play in New York. He won't let Jackson chase him out. In the story, Bergman cited NBA GM who said the Celtics would not surrender either of the Brooklyn Nets picks from the Anthony, just like Danny and I just said, because Danny Ainge is not a lunatic and Boston Celtics are not a bunch of idiots. Of course, if Boston does trade one of those, it should be for all NBA type of player or close in the prime who would fit in the team's current development act. Anthony will turn 33 in May, and he was already lost several miles per hour in his fast ball. By talking on Anthony's contract, which will pay him more than $26 million next season, the Celtics would essentially be taking themselves out of the free agents market. While it's sure thing they will have the real shoot this summer to acquire Gordon Hayward or Blake Griffin, it's not sure. Either of those guys could provide more value than Anthony and would not require surrendering any assets. Anthony is still a helpful offense player, but especially given his price tag, it would hurt the Celtics in a long run, and it would hurt any chance for the Celtics to get younger, better talents. The Celtics might still be intrigued by what Carmelo Anthony could do for the team. They know far better than I do whether they have real chance at one of the top free agents. And they know far better than I what they could get by placing the Nets pick on the table. Maybe the Celtics could consider Anthony if the price is right, or he is one piece in several of moves to overhaul the roster. But finding the right series of moves is far-fetched, and by any chance giving up Crowder in Anthony trade would be dumb. Crowder his contract is more valuable than Anthony's in his, and take money out of it, and it's still not all crazy to argue that Crowder has had a better season so far. A lot of advanced statistics, box plus minus, win shares per 48, as ESPN real plus minus is favoring Crowder's impact on winning to the date. And add into that the age difference between the two players. Crowder will make more, and the fact that the Crowder will make about $20 million less than Anthony the next season, and the comparison is not even close. Crowder is more valuable player in his money, maybe at any money. And because of all reasons, it seems secondary to mention that A, the Celtics currently need the most help in defense and rebounding, and B, acquiring Anthony would not address to any of those issues. It's cool to think the the Celtics acquiring big name, but they should also be looking to improve their team. And I'm not sure any feasible Anthony trade would do that. I think that J. King explained it all. Do you have something to add on the story, Danny?
Well, like you said, as of right now, the Celtics' biggest issue this season has been the fact that they haven't been able to rebound the ball. You know, in my opinion, Danny Ainge, if you're going to go after someone, you know, that's, you know, a major superstar, you better make sure that, for one, they are going to be here for the long term and ready to basically help you win a championship. And two, you got to make sure that you're basically doing this team some justice, to not go the route of basically giving up your assets that you worked, you know, hard to sucker the Nets for, and basically prove yourself to be a sucker as well by giving them up for a player that's just going to leave you in the end after just a few months. But in my opinion, Danny Ainge has got to go looking for a big man of some sort, because that's the main thing right now. The fact that we haven't been able to rebound has been the biggest problem. And for all we know, you know, again, even with Carmelo, I don't think we'll be able to beat the Cavaliers this season. So your main thing is trying to focus on the Toronto Raptors. And with a big man, as we are basically set right now, with a big man, you might be able to get that job done. So if I was Danny Ainge, I would wait basically until the offseason to go the route of finding out where your pick is going to be and how much money you have, and see what, you know, what major stars are going to be available to come your way, even if it's through a sign and trade, for example, because you know you're going to have several teams that are going to be in danger of losing their superstars, because many superstars are going to realize, I need to join forces elsewhere like Durant did last season in order to try and make sure I have a shot to knock off either Cleveland or Golden State. And that's where you try to cash in. But you do not go giving up all your assets for a player who's just going to walk away a few months later.
Excellent stuff. Do you want to talk right now about all-star bench players and all-star players in general?
We do know basically the results now. For anybody that isn't watching TNT or keeping an eye on Twitter, the All-Star reserves just got released. Of course, yesterday me and Igor discussed what happened with Isaiah Thomas not being able to make the All-Star starters because of the fact that the fans voted for Dwayne Wade, gave Dwayne Wade the second most amount of votes from their department, pretty much, and then after that, John Wall got the third most, and Isaiah Thomas got the fourth most. So because of that, John Wall was given the nod, because him and Isaiah Thomas ended up tied overall in points, pretty much. So when it comes to the reserves now, you have, coming out of the Western Conference for the bench, you have DeMarcus Cousins, Russell Westbrook, Gordon Hayward, DeAndre Jordan, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Marc Gasol. So, of course, those guys will be joining forces with Stephen Curry, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Anthony Davis. Then in the Eastern Conference, Isaiah Thomas did make it as for the Boston Celtics, so he's the only one going. Isaiah Thomas will be joined with John Wall. Or should I say DeMar DeRozan? We mentioned John Wall, but it was DeMar DeRozan who won the tiebreaker over Isaiah Thomas. Sorry about that, everybody. So John Wall got in along with Isaiah Thomas, Kyle Lowry, Paul George, Kevin Love, Paul Millsap, and Kemba Walker off the bench. So LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, DeMar DeRozan, who won the tiebreaker over Isaiah Thomas for the starters, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jimmy Butler will join forces with those names I just mentioned for the bench. So now the All-Star rosters are basically set. Now we just got to find out who will be competing in the Rising Stars Challenge, and of course the All-Star Saturday night, which to me is always what's more interesting than the actual All-Star game itself.
Okay, and I mean, I don't have anything to add except that Isaiah Thomas should start, but the system of the selection in NBA is that way that he's not starting. The same with Westbrook on the other side, which is ridiculous. And the players that Westbrook is like one of the top candidates for the MVP title and leading scorer in NBA in points per game, if I'm correct, more than 30 points per game, and Isaiah Thomas is like 29.5 after last night's win. And anyway, I want to say that let's talk a little about the games. Isaiah Thomas said that Boston Celtics need to play with toughness like they did against the Houston Rockets and more consistently. The mystery of the hole in the wall never be solved fully, but Marcus Smart took responsibility Wednesday night of the damage in Verizon Center. The Boston Celtics guard said he didn't recall punching hole in Wizards Arena, but he may do it. I don't remember it. Anyway, the Boston proved Wednesday night by surpass Houston Rockets 120-109. 24 hours can change alone. The Celtics entered the night hoping to remember how to hit opposing offenses as hard as Smart struck that wall. And they left it with Isaiah Thomas considering the best win of the season. A complete effort that involved limiting James Harden to the extent that can be done and irritating the Rockets' three-point shooters and refusing to give in to the early deep double-digit deficit. The NBA regular season can be violent son of a gun, and it's vital to limit the destruction of downward turns. If you drop one game, the next one coming, and the next one is loaded with talent, and I thought our guys did really good, said Stevens. I thought they stayed together. And the last word of Stevens' description, I thought we were tough, stood as the most important, because even when the Celtics rattled off 13 wins in the 16 games over the last month, they bleed points at levels that made the coach uncomfortable. On several occasions during the winning streak, he pointed out that the club needed to fix its broken defense. The same unit that carried Boston last season, forcing so many turnovers, the same unit has turned into limping, growing mess, one of the NBA's 10 worst defenses this season. Considering the massacre the Celtics allowed Tuesday night in Washington, Harden and Rockets seems like the worst possible matchup. They spread teams out with sharpshooters all over the court and set up ideal canvas for Harden to paint his pick-and-roll masterpiece. Midway through the season, he should lead NBA ballots. With the season so strong, Russell Westbrook could average triple-double and still not deserving the award. Looking at that challenge, Stevens switched up starting lineup, and he was throwing out Jaylen Brown as shooting guard and Jerebko as power forward. The resulting unit, Isaiah Thomas, Brown, Crowder, Jerebko, and Al Horford, might be the switchiest group in the Celtics can master with Thomas on the court. So they can switch everything on the defense. Though the long mobile batch of the Athletics had only played 2 minutes together, according to NBA.com, the Stevens must be, intrigued. What the heck, especially against those guys, we need something new. And what is ironic about trying something new is that the Celtics are really trying to regain their old identity. They can get away with defensive slippage these days because Thomas has turned into 5'9" meteor, and Al Horford opened up so much for his new teammates in several key Celtics have developed offensive threats, but they know they will limit their scoring as long as they continue defending like starfish. The personnel mix has changed more than it appears in the first glance, especially deeper into the rotation, but the Celtics know they can still hit with more force than they did over the half of the season. In the locker room, Jay Crowder revealed earlier this week the coaching staff has placed a sheet of paper to remind the players how close they are to climbing back into the top 5 of defensive ranks, and they are now 22nd in the defensive rating in NBA. In NBA, only few points per 100 possessions separating positions of top 10 and the top 10 worst defenses. What the Celtics did to the Rockets qualifying as stellar, Harden still finished with 30 points and 12 assists because he is really, really good. But the number of defenders, most likely Crowder, tracked the superstar and limiting his impact. The probable MVP at this point, turned the ball over 7 times, missed 9 of his 12 3-pointers, and finished the game with ±14. And this is the good defense. At their best, the Rockets breathe, oxygen of Harden creates, but the Celtics fought like heck to keep him away from the big impact. And Thomas said that this is the proof that we are capable of playing the good defense, and Jake Crowder did a hell of a job, Smart and Horford, and they were able to switch on everything. I felt like he never really took over the game, Crowder said, and that's what it's about. Jerebko's length and energy held the first unit, and Horford had monster night at both ends. Though Stevens called switching everything in the fourth quarter scary because it took Horford away from the hoop, leaving smaller guys to box out near the rim. The Celtics even wrecked 48-30 rebounding margin. We won the rebounding battle. They often get pillaged in that category, so the big advantage felt both weird and telling. We know we have toughness, it's just a matter of doing it, and I want to be tough every night, said Thomas. The Celtics were everything they wanted to be. Thomas scored 38 and 13 points in the fourth quarter, while running offense that ripped away Houston's pick and roll strategy defending. And Horford hit cutters whenever the Rockets paid him much attention. Crowder scored 23 points, even though he missed the first 7 3-pointers, and one was dagger 3-pointer. Strong evidence of attention, and Stevens' team fell behind early, kept the things manageable, and then rushed to pass the Rockets with the 2 second-half runs. And all the scoring was nice, but the defense was better. The Celtics played wonderful offense in the fourth quarter, 11 assists, 13 made field goals, but made that possible by forcing 7 turnovers and limiting Rockets in 2 second chance points. And after the debacle in DC, Boston felt desperate. It felt like do or die, said Crowder. It was must-win game, said Thomas. And during the mid-season, maybe the real Celtics defense stood up Wednesday night, but the real trick is doing it over again and again and again. Daniel, I have a couple of questions about that game. I want you to comment on that game. the strategy of defending Harden, the first question, and Jay Crowder in defending Harden and everybody else, Smart, Horford switching everything. The second question is that unit with Jaylen Brown at 2 and Jerebko at 4, Thomas, Brown, Crowder, Jerebko, Horford, that was able to switch everything in the defense, and that group was very positive. And the third question is, we out-rebounding them 48 and 30. What do you say about that?
Well, when it comes to defending Harden, we got to give the credit mainly to Jay Crowder and Al Horford. Crowder basically made it where Harden not only had to work on the defensive end because of the fact that Crowder ended up scoring 23 points in 36 minutes, which of course that in itself was, a big performance, knowing that Harden ended up scoring 30. So Crowder only got beat by 7 points, and we all know, if you look at the stats here, that Harden scored 30, but he ended up scoring 16 from the free throw line. So that's really not impressive, because that means you only scored 14 from the field. And reason for that was because of the fact that Jay Crowder really went, bodying up against him, making it where Harden, if he was gonna get a shot, he was gonna have to be shooting with fadeaway jumpers, fadeaway threes. Crowder was not going to allow Harden to get to the rim that last night when it came to him attacking. And every time Harden did get around Crowder, due to it being like a pick and roll play, or Crowder being picked off and, Harden using it to his advantage, Horford would be right there, or Amir Johnson would be right there waiting for Harden in the wings, forcing him to either A, take the jumper, or retreat basically back to beyond the three-point line, which allowed Crowder to basically, recover and get back on Harden, and Harden would have to reset the play or give the ball up to somebody else. So Crowder and the big guys in this game really played a key role, and, that is what you got to do against Harden, which is why Harden, like we mentioned earlier when it came to the injury on Jerebko, he basically decided to finally go on his own and attack the rim regardless of how many guys were in there, because he figured, the Celtics are finally pulling away in this game. I'm going to have to start getting to the free throw line because my shots aren't going down. And unfortunately for him, he failed to make sure that he went showing the officials, I need a foul call, and they gave it to him, but he busted Jerebko open because of it. Now, when it came to the starting lineup, we mentioned the situation with Marcus Smart, basically, if I'm correct, earlier in the show, about him having issues with the coaches, basically after the Washington game. And I think that Marcus Smart not starting was a kind of a punishment from Brad Stevens and the coaches for him basically acting up during the Washington game on the bench and getting into an argument with them when he was sitting down. But
assistant coach.
Yeah, but in this game, I think, the numbers that you were reading, I think that's kind of deceiving, because when you look at the Rockets starting lineup, you don't have any legit big men on that team, really. If you were to tell me that the Celtics would have had these type of numbers with the rebounding and all of that, with that lineup against, let's say, the Philadelphia 76ers with Noel and Okafor, for example, or if they were to do it against, the Cleveland Cavaliers, or somebody else who's got a couple of big guys that are dominating the glass, then I would say that right there is eye-popping and might actually mean we have to consider sitting Amir Johnson down and let these guys take over. We all know Avery Bradley is not going to be out of the starting lineup, which would mean maybe Jaylen Brown's the one that would have to give up his spot to Avery Bradley once Bradley comes back. But you would have to maybe start Jonas Jerebko and continue to start him. But this Houston Rockets team, when you take a look at them, they're a team that likes to go small because they like to take a lot of three-pointers. That starting lineup combined ended up taking 26 threes out of the team's 31 total threes in the game. So that shows you they're not a team that's going to be looking for layups and dunks unless you actually give it to them. They're going to be looking to basically push the pace and go for a three-point shot constantly. So I give the guys credit because they dominated the glass in this game. Al Horford basically got several blocks. If I'm correct, he ended up, from what it says here, he came away with 2 blocks last night. Jonas Jerebko had 1, So that though comes away with the roster, unfortunately. They got to start playing like this, and I would hope that Brad Stevens would let the same exact rotation play. Now, if you're going to take Jaylen Brown out, and let Marcus Smart start in the next game, fine. But I think that Amir Johnson, if he's not going to go the route of actually showing a little bit more aggressiveness, you keep Jonas Jerebko in there, and we actually get to see, because the next few games, Igor, you know for a fact, the next few games, we're going to be seeing some of the teams in the Eastern Conference that have the big guys that can dominate the glass.
About Jerebko, I totally agree with you. We will face Orlando Magic with length, athleticism. We will face the Greek Freak and the others from Milwaukee Bucks. And we need length, athleticism, and we need Brad Stevens to have at the court the lineup that can play the better defense, especially with Isaiah Thomas, because that lineup that Brad Stevens was forcing at the beginning of the season, all defensive lineup with Isaiah Thomas is simply not defending well. And right now we cannot put together that lineup because Avery Bradley at the moment is hurt. Anyway, this lineup with Thomas that is having Jaylen Brown at 2, Crowder at 3, Jerebko at 4, Horford at 5 can be solution or the cure. I mean, in longer stretches than against the Houston, in order Celtics to make some stops at the end of the game. That much I can say. And about the rebounding, it is nice to have plus 18, but my opinion is that the Celtics still need the rebounder, and the Celtics will have to address about the rebounding issues in the free market. I hope that we will get somebody like Andrew Bogut or the Denver, anybody from Denver, Nurkic, Jokic, those guys can rebound. And I mean, we need backup center and rebounder and the rim protector in order to have a playoff run. And in the next 3 games, we need the 3 wins to catch Toronto and potentially to surpass them, because both Toronto and Cleveland are struggling. Cleveland lost from Kings, and Toronto Raptors is having the series of 5 consecutive losses. So we must keep on winning and surpass them, right?
Yep. Again, right now we're in a position where we are not going to be going anywhere if we don't have the proper players. Right now, as they say, this league is a star-driven league, and we need to basically prove that we are the team that has the best chance to knock off the Cavaliers in order to have anybody that's willing to come this way actually come to us. Right now, the Toronto Raptors are the team that has that title as the one that has the best shot to knock off LeBron James and the Cavaliers. So if you're going to basically go the route of getting the point of basically having that title stripped from the Raptors to come and having it placed around your, waist, as they would say in the wrestling world, then you got to go the route of getting the proper players and making a statement this, in the playoffs this year, and actually making it past the Raptors, because right now, odds are we're going to be in the number 2-3 matchup with the Toronto Raptors, meaning before you even get to the Cavaliers, you're going to have to get to the Raptors first. In this case, unless the Raptors somehow get beat in the first round, which is highly unlikely. So Danny Ainge has got to make the move that he knows will help this team. If you can't get the superstar we need, at least make the move that you know will help us go through the Toronto Raptors based on what we've been seeing us have, the issues we've had with them. And basically what's been the issues? The issues have been that Jonas Valanciunas and the rest of the big guys on that team have chewed us up on the boards, getting offensive rebounds and kicking it out for threes or putting it back up for layups and dunks. You need another big man that can help Al Horford because Amir Johnson has not gotten the job done. If you can get another big man that can basically help dominate the boards down low and actually score some points, that right there in itself can tilt the weight of the weight of the scale, or can tilt the favor of the matchup in your favor instead of it being in the favor of the Toronto Raptors, which unfortunately right now that's the way it is. You got to give the Toronto Raptors the advantage over you right now until you actually get somebody else, because going small like we're doing right now with Jonas Jerebko as one of the bigs, along with Al Horford being the other, or Amir Johnson being the other, or Kelly Olynyk being the other, is not what's going to be able to help you get the job done, just because you're able to pull those guys away, the big guys away from the paint in this case. You need somebody that's going to get the job done rebounding, and we all know Al Horford, unless he's the only big man in there, he prefers to stay beyond the three-point line because that's basically what he does. He shoots from the outside. So you need another Amir Johnson, but somebody who basically likes to go the route of rebounding. So you need someone that's more of a Kendrick Perkins type player.
Okay, Danny. Now let's move to the game against Washington Wizards. 108-123, 25 points. Thomas and 13 assists, 6 rebounds. Crowder, but it was terrible. We gave up 123 points. We could not get any stops. And, the Smart at the end of the game, like you said, had clash with Allen. He was assistant coach. He was frustrated. Isaiah Thomas didn't have any help in that game. We trailed the whole game, and at the end, it was total debacle for the Celtics. So, tell me, in your opinion, how did you see that game?
Well, in this case, whether you look at the game against the Blazers or whether you look in the game against the Wizards that we both lost, the biggest issue with these two games was the fact that we didn't have Avery Bradley available, and Avery Bradley would have been arguably the most important player outside of Isaiah Thomas in those two games, knowing the type of rosters that those two teams have and who they depend on. Those are teams that depend on both the shooting guard and the point guard to basically do their dirty work when it comes to their scoring. So unfortunately, Avery Bradley, who's been out constantly over the last few weeks, not playing, made it where Marcus Smart had to start the game, and we basically ended up getting weaker on the bench. And the bench basically cost us both those games against Washington and Portland, if you look at it, based on the way things went. And so the Celtics starters in both those games did their job, because the bench in both games was so terrible and was so weakened by all the injuries and the guys that were sick. The bench from the other team did the job about scoring our bench by a margin that was big enough to actually negate anything that the Celtics starters did. So, I'm upset that we lost, but I'm not to a point where basically some of our group members, for example, are, where they're basically ready to jump off the team's, bandwagon and talk crap about them, because I know technically, let Avery Bradley be able to play in those games, and we're talking about probably a totally different outcome, especially against the Blazers, knowing how close the game was at the very end, and of course knowing that game technically we were screwed. But the game against Washington, it's a totally different thing. Washington was more, you could say, they had more of a reason to want to win that game because of what happened in the last game against them here in Boston. But our guys pretty much are in a position where we need to get everybody back healthy. And Avery Bradley and the starters are the last ones we can afford to be losing. Isaiah Thomas, Crowder, Al Horford, and Bradley are the 4 players we cannot afford to lose at any stretch the rest of the season. And unfortunately, with Avery Bradley, you've now lost him for like 8 of the last 9 games, something like that. And look at the problems it's been causing. So those 2 teams, you got the wins, yeah, but really, did those wins really prove anything for you? Yeah, Washington, they'll accept it, Igor, because they're a team fighting to get in. They're not a team that's in the top 4 of the Eastern Conference right now. They're a team that's in the lower 4 of the Eastern Conference playoff picture right now. So they're still fighting to get home court in this case. So we're still ahead of them. The Blazers, you look at their situation. They're in the Western Conference, which is loaded with a bunch of playoff teams capable of making the playoffs. So they're desperate. But again, Avery Bradley, once he gets back, that's when I'll find out. That's when those teams can really prove whether they're capable of beating us or not. So I won't stress either one of those games. But the fact that we beat Houston without Avery Bradley kind of lets you know that our guys probably just didn't give it their all in those 2 games.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. This game was simply a stinker. And I mean, it was a road game, and the Celtics were without Avery Bradley and didn't have much energy. The defense was bad, the rebounding was bad, Isaiah Thomas didn't have any help, and we cannot win the games with giving up 123 points. The same is going with the game against Portland, 123-127. To give up 127 points in overtime on the home court is too much. In that game, Isaiah Thomas had 41.6 assists and 3 rebounds. And in my opinion, worth to mention is the last play that Brad Stevens drew up for Terry Rozier for the 3 that tied the game and the regulations, and led the game into the overtime that we lost. In the overtime, we could not get any stops, and that ended the game. Ivan Turner received the boost in his return in Boston as the member of Trailblazers. And worth mentioning is that NBA admitted the last play that Marcus Smart did, stole the ball, and probably the bucket should stand. I mean, we were robbed at the end of regulations. And that's not just my opinion, that is official NBA review. So what are your impressions about the loss against Portland Trailblazers then?
Well, the Blazers, as I said, are a team that's, fighting to just get into a playoff spot. It's not like the Washington Wizards, who are pretty much guaranteed to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference with how weak the Eastern Conference is. The Blazers are playing in the West that has, 10, maybe you could say, 12 teams that are all capable of getting in. So the fact that we actually made it, made it in that game to overtime, and one thing that we can take out of that game, again, Avery Bradley didn't play, so I won't stress the loss in this case. But there's, one good thing we can take out of that game, even in defeat, which is the performance we got out of some of our young guys, in particular the clutch shots we saw from Terry Rozier, for example. He made a big-time 3 at the very end of regulation, which forced the overtime period, and that allowed the Celtics to get to overtime. And that's the type of progression we need to see out of these young players, because that's what we're going to need to see out of them come playoff time, because we all know come playoff time, the officials start to swallow their whistle for the most part against some of the players that aren't the major superstars in the league, and the defense starts to tighten up against the superstars like Isaiah Thomas, Al Horford. So some of these young players are really going to have to basically prove that they're capable of making these teams pay if they're left wide open. And Terry Rozier making a shot like that is going to help build his confidence up. And if he can actually continue to do that throughout the rest of the season, he's going to have teams looking at him and saying, do I want to go double team Isaiah Thomas here on the final, shot and leave Rozier open? or do I go the route of making sure we don't leave Rozier open, because he's been proving throughout the second half of the season that he is capable of making a three-pointer if I leave him wide open. So Rozier basically doing what he did was probably the biggest thing of the night overall. So that's the benefit of what we saw in that game. We lost the game, yeah, but again, unless the Blazers beat us with our four best players, it's like many people will say about Golden State, Igor. You beat Golden State without Stephen Curry, or without Draymond Green, or without Klay Thompson, or without Durant, or you beat the Cavs without LeBron, or without Irving, or without Love. People are just gonna, shove it off to the side, sweep it aside and say, no big deal. If you didn't beat them without the star players, it doesn't matter. Well, it's the same thing here. Just because Avery Bradley is not a superstar does not mean it doesn't matter in this case. He's still just as valuable to this team as any of those superstars are to their teams. So that's how you got to look at it.
And I have one more question for the end. I mean, that is the question, what do you expect from the next 3 games that we are going to recap in the next radio show? On the radio show is January 30th, 31st, actually, January 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern against, the guest is Brenda Facemeyer from Face of Facemeyer, and this is radio show. And up until then, we have Friday night, TD Garden, Boston, Celtics against Magic, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Then Bucks against the Celtics in, Barclays Center, Milwaukee, 8 p.m. Eastern, back-to-back game. And finally, Monday, we have Detroit Pistons in TD Garden, 8 p.m. Eastern. In my opinion, we should win the whole 3 games in order, like I said, to catch and surpass the Toronto Raptors. What do you think?
Well, you're absolutely right. We should be winning all 3 of these games, because none of these teams right now are teams that are ahead of you in the standings. So these are teams that you should be beating, because you're proving right now, based on your record, that you're better than them, especially the Orlando Magic. Losing to them is like losing to the Brooklyn Nets, in my opinion. Now the good thing about this whole situation is that you look at all 3 of these teams, Igor, all 3 of these teams have big guys that are capable of dominating the glass. Antetokounmpo, for example, is in Milwaukee. You got Vucevic in Orlando, and then you got 2 guys in Detroit, for example. This is where, if Brad Stevens decides to keep the starting lineup the way he had it in yesterday's game against Houston, this is where you could very well determine if Amir Johnson is really as important as he's been made out to be, or if keeping Jonas Jerebko in the game to start alongside Avery Bradley when he returns might actually be the better bet to go. So if I was Brad Stevens, I would actually keep the starting lineup with Al Horford, Isaiah Thomas, Crowder, Smart, and Jonas Jerebko tomorrow night against the Orlando Magic, and see what would end up happening. If the Celtics were to actually win the rebounding battle with Jonas Jerebko starting over Amir Johnson, then you might actually have to truly consider Jonas Jerebko keeping that starting spot until you get another big man that's really going to focus on winning the rebounding battle, because we know Amir Johnson, nobody fears him taking a three-pointer, really. We've seen him left wide open, given 10, 15 feet for the most part when he gets the ball beyond the three-point line. Teams are pretty much telling him, you go ahead, you shoot, and we'll live with the results. He's only had like 2 or 3 games this season where he's really dominated, offensively. So Jonas Jerebko can make you pay if you don't basically go the route of defending him, because of the fact that he's more reliable from the three-point line than Amir Johnson is. So I say that the Celtics, they should win all 3 of these games, and this is the perfect time to test out which lineup is the best lineup to prepare yourself to do the rebounding battle with the Toronto Raptors on the 1st. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully at least come Monday, January 30th, which would be next, this Monday coming, hopefully you get Avery Bradley back for that game so he can try to work some of the rust off before you go at it with the Toronto Raptors. Because if you don't have Avery Bradley in that game against the Raptors, odds are you are not going to win. And if they beat you in that game, you're going to lose the tiebreaker to them due to the losing the season series, 3 games to nothing head-to-head, meaning that you're going to have to beat them by 1 game in the standings in order to actually get the number 2 seed come the end of the season.
You explained everything, and I just have one thing to add. I agree with starting Jonas Jerebko if he can play. You know that he has 4 stitches. I mean, if he can play as a starter, the starter minutes and the role. But when he is 100% healthy, you're totally right. I would start him over Amir Johnson. And I'm talking like I don't know. I know that I'm boring, but Amir Johnson is not a starter for majority of the reasons that you mentioned. Yes, he's playing. He's hustling, but he is not old Amir Johnson that played in Toronto. His legs are not the same, and he's not for the starters anymore. He's for the reserve at the best. And the good thing is that his contract is expiring, and like you said, let's try that lineup with Jaylen Brown and Amir Johnson. I mean, not Amir Johnson, but Jaylen Brown at 2, Jerebko at 4, Crowder, Thomas, and Horford. So let's play that lineup a little extensively and see what they can do. And let's get those 3 wins, and let's be number 2 ahead of that Toronto game at February 1st. If we are number 2 ahead of that game, that is total different point of view ahead of that game. Total different, situation. And let's make that better situation for us in front of that game. And I hope that on the next live chat, we will be chatting about the biggest win of the season against Toronto Raptors. So that's all that I want to say. The worst case scenario, 2-1, and I'm hoping for 3-0. And the next shows are, like I said, Tuesday 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern, against after 31st before the Raptors game, then live video chat after Raptors game. This is February 1st, and you will watch it live and on our YouTube channel. And the next radio show 157 is February 9th with Sean Bucky, if everything is okay. So stay with us. Log in tomorrow 7:30 p.m. Eastern at Vivid Green Celtics Fans Forum. Danny will do, and I will cover the game against Orlando Magic. Very important game that we should win. And also Saturday with us 8 p.m. Eastern in Milwaukee against the Bucks. And we will be back January 31st after Detroit Pistons game, which is on program at Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern in TD Garden. So after that game, we will return Tuesday 31st, and we will talk about the last 3 games. And for now, support us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Celtics Talk Radio, Celtics Talk Radio Twitter, STR capital letters, We Believe Green, Celtics Fans Forum, and Celtics Talk Radio at the Facebook, also Celtics Talk Radio at the Instagram, and you can listen us Celtics Talk Radio at the iTunes, search us there, and blogtalkradio.com, our broadcasting station, Celtics Talk Radio. I'm Igor, it was Danny, and this was episode 3 of live post-game video chat after big win against Houston Rockets, probably the biggest win of the season. And Danny, I'm giving you the word This is legit team with superstar, with 70% almost winning. The third team at the Western Conference, and this is the biggest win of the season. And the most important game of the season will be February 1st against the Raptors. So that has been said. Go Celtics, and thanks for supporting us. We are very pleasing with your ratings, watching, and we will continue to provide you the best possible information, program, and analysis just for you. So that was episode number 3 of our live Portland chat. And Danny, back to you.
Okay, so again, tomorrow night, Celtics take on the Magic from our group, the play-by-play coverage, and of course Saturday night they take on the Milwaukee Bucks. And the Celtics, this is the time where if they're going to prove anything, now's the time to prove it, basically, because now you got the opportunity to basically not only pass the Raptors, but you got the chance to basically gain ground on the Cleveland Cavaliers as well, who are also facing their own turmoil, not only in the group as a whole, basically as teammates, but also LeBron James against his actual ownership. So this is the opportunity for you to start actually gaining some ground on the number 2 and 1 seed, and proving to all the doubters that you are basically a team that can actually make some sort of a challenge and make a statement to all these free agents that are soon to be free agents, that this is a team that is capable of winning a championship. So again, tomorrow night we will see you at 7:30 in the Weebly Green Celtics Fan Forum group.